Phoenix Down Radio is on the air.
Welcome everybody to Phoenix Down Radio, episode number 166. I'm your host Klaus Nightbringer, and joining me is Seyrr Timono. What's going on, buddy?
Yo, stuff is pretty good.
That's good.
Leveled some crafters, finished an anima weapon.
Ooh, I'm Seyrr, and I'm working on old weapons that don't really mean anything except for I'm a completionist and have to get them all.
Have you been reading my diary?
Yes.
Oh, well, okay then.
But yes.
Oh, how about you? How have things been, Klaus?
They have been stuff and things, I guess. Realistically, not a lot going on. We've finally gotten spring, which is kind of nice. The last 2 days have been very pleasant, sunny, and actually, above 50 degrees for once. But
California got that a few weeks ago, which means I've been having all sorts of fun seasonal allergy stuff again.
Yeah, that's starting again. The whole stuff nose and all that good stuff. But hopefully, voice
Pop those
doesn't.
Claritin.
Hopefully, my voice doesn't sound too bad today. But other than that, just a lot of work. In game, I actually did have been doing a lot of what's it called? The PvP, Crystalline Conflict. And I finally broke through bronze, and I'm in silver rank right now, which
Nice.
is pretty shitty. But I mean, man, some of the people you go up against are just not good at it.
I have known more and more people who are getting into it, in part because the matches go so fast, like 5 to 7 minutes. It's not that much of commitment.
And the queue times are super fast.
And then you look up and all of a sudden it's 3 a.m., which is why I have been avoiding doing it. Though Spender did just hit Diamond 5.
Man. Like I said, I'm stuck on Silver 3. That's how rough it's been for me.
I'm back in bronze somewhere.
I have... I did finally hit rank 15 on the board, though, so I have now completed my goal of being able to wear sunglasses with a hat. So I can quit the game now, and I don't have to touch it ever again. So good night, folks.
You can unlock some cool adventurer plates.
Yeah, I mean, I am going to continue to do it. I mean, because it's all right. You take
Machinist is still the clear winner on that one.
Yeah, they're tough, but I mean, I am actually enjoying it as Bard.
No, I mean in terms of the adventurer plate, they get to pull out the cool sniper rifle on their adventurer plates.
I get what you're saying, but they are actually very strong in the PvP combat as well.
Awesome.
I've like I said, I've been playing probably about 4 games a day. Yeah, because I try and limit it to make sure that I'm not burning myself out or getting rage angry, because you can encounter some people who are just bad, and it's like, yeah.
Effective emotional management is very, very helpful for this.
I have found that a good balanced team is able to have people up at the front as well as people in the back supporting, because Bard is very squishy, but if you're at range, you're very powerful because your damage scales based on your distance.
Yeah, a lot of its abilities, or it has something where... just at more of a distance, it does ramp up pretty quickly, it looked like.
And its limit break, it is the epitome of a support limit break. It basically boosts your entire party, reducing cooldowns, increasing potencies. You just burn through people after you hit limit break and you're going through your skills. They just love it. But we're also, like I said, we're very squishy and we get targeted quite a bit as well. So I did have one match where I went like 5-0 and 15. So I had
nice.
5 kills, no deaths, and 15 assists. That was like insane. Usually my lines are like 1, 5, and 3. But no, they're actually very good at getting assists. But if you have not tried Crystalline Conflict yet, guys, I do recommend giving it a try, because like I said,
great for experience points, tomestones.
Yep. And then like I said, the stuff you can get from the currency. it's not bad.
There are so many glamours behind PvP currency that I had forgotten about.
Yeah, lots of stuff. So that's kind of what I've been doing in game. I have been playing Vampire Survivors still. I don't know if you guys have jumped into that. It's that really inexpensive game on Steam. It's a bullet hell style game in the style of what do you call it? Castlevania.
Oh, okay.
And finally unlocked everything, which takes a lot of time, but it's a fun little game. Maybe I'll stream it sometime if I get back into the whole streaming thing again.
Yeah, could be fun.
Definitely. But before we jump into gaming communities, we have to throw our huge shout out and thank you to our Patreon producers, Nick Nar, Aurori, and Tibiant. So let's jump into that gaming community news. And this one came as a shocker to me. The Embracer Group is poised to buy Square Enix Montreal, Crystal Dynamics, Eidos Montreal, and over 50 IPs from Square Enix.
Not a surprise just to you. I don't think any of us really saw this coming.
Let me go ahead and paste this into the chat. Thank you to our friends at Nova Crystallis for this information. But apparently Square Enix has entered into an agreement to sell Eidos Montreal, Square Enix Montreal, and Crystal Dynamics to the Embracer Group in a $300 million deal that includes IPs like Tomb Raider, Deus Ex, Thief, and Legacy of Kain. A lot of games that we haven't heard, or that are like, I was gonna say some of the games we haven't heard a lot about in recent times, like Legacy of Kain. I mean, that was a PlayStation game.
I was about to say, how long has it been since anyone mentioned that? Pretty much it seems like Square was divesting itself of its North American properties, though for some of them may have just been the back catalog, the type of stuff that they may have just been doing remakes for. So maybe Embracer has some new ideas for these properties. I don't know.
Well, Embracer Group, they're the conglomerate that has studios like Gearbox, THQ Nordic, and a number of others. The Embracer Group themselves really aren't that vocal when it comes to the things that they're doing with their games. They kind of just let their studios do their thing, and then whatever games come out. It's not like, they're being pushed big like the ones that are owned by Microsoft or Sony or the like. But this does kind of fall in line with some news that we had gotten earlier this year from Square Enix's CEO. Talking how they want to focus more on the Japanese style games. So maybe that's part of the whole thing, is they're divesting some of those things that aren't making as much money for the company and focusing on the properties that are going to be more profitable for them, like Final Fantasy, like Dragon Quest.
Right.
The more Japanese style games, and then focus more on actually putting their money into that and hopefully making more money as well.
Yeah, their press release did also mention that it would help them with moving forward with investments in other fields, such as blockchain, AI, and the cloud, some of that technological stuff they've mentioned before, which I know we've met with varying levels of skepticism.
Yeah.
I think we can forego going into detail on that one, but it's at least in keeping with what they've said they want to look at some of their future investments. The transaction still needs to be approved by the various regulatory bodies involved, but the expectation is that will happen sometime within the next 2 to 4 months.
Yep. So they're looking around Q3 for this deal to go through. I've been listening to other news shows and podcasts talking about this particular move, and one thing that I heard mentioned on it, I believe this came from the Kind of Funny Games Daily Show. They were saying that maybe this is Square Enix being poised to being purchased by like a larger company, say Sony.
That rumor goes around so often. I don't think they're especially looking to be purchased, so
no. But I mean, if they can clean up, things on their books that don't make them appear as profitable, it makes them more likely to be looked at in a favorable light to be acquired like that. And it makes sense for the fact that Sony And Square Enix do have a lot of exclusivity deals when it comes to a lot of their games. Like Final Fantasy 16 is going to be a PlayStation console exclusive.
You do have a fair amount of like the Nintendo properties as well, though. So I don't know that Square Enix would necessarily want to hitch their wagon to a single.
Well, but look at what's happened with Microsoft when they purchased Rare. I mean, they got all of those games that were on Nintendo properties as well.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not that it's unprecedented. It's just something that we're and with
at this point. Yeah. At this point, it's mostly at the stage of rumor, and until we get something more definite, I wouldn't put a lot of stock in them. But that possibility is always at the back of our minds.
Yeah, and sometimes rumors are just fun to talk about. You know, in the whole what if scenario, especially if it's more of a positive what if.
Yeah, speculation is fun. I'll give you that.
Exactly.
All right, let's see.
Let's go ahead and jump into our next bit of news. The Final Fantasy and Uniqlo collaboration is going to be coming to the U.S. starting May 16th. Does this get you excited, Seyrr?
I mean, like, I could use some new shirts. The summertime's coming around.
So basically, I think we talked about this in a previous episode when it was first announced, back when it was going to be released in Japan, but apparently now next week the US store for Uniqlo is going to be selling these different Final Fantasy themed shirts for I believe $19.90 each, and each one of the 16 mainline games is represented in t-shirt form.
Yep. It is, of course, a limited edition run, so they've noted that the launch will be May 16th, so a week from Monday, mid-morning Eastern time. No idea what kind of supply it looks like and if it's something that we would expect to run out quickly.
Yeah, but, you know, if you're anything like most people, the FOMO is going to be real.
Yep.
But, I mean, I am definitely going to be taking a look at the Final Fantasy XIV shirt that designed with the Signs of Seventh Dawn is Chef's Kiss. I really do enjoy that one. And a number of the other shirts actually look really cool too. I don't think I'll buy all 16, but I wouldn't be surprised if I end up buying at least 5.
They did note, of course, that some of the shirts will only be available in select stores. So if there is one that you're looking to score, it's worth popping over to the Uniqlo's special website for the promotion and confirm those details.
Yeah, I think that's as if you're looking at going to the brick and mortar stores.
Yeah.
But as far as online purchases, you should be able to get most of them pretty readily available, depending on what type of stock they have for it.
I'd still want to try it on, make sure it sits comfortably.
Yeah, and I guess my my first question on it is, are these going to be U.S. sizes or Japanese sizes?
Let me see.
Because that is a very, very big difference. I know the past actual Final Fantasy shirts like they had at FanFest, those were all Japanese sized. So you had to make sure to order like a size larger for U.S. markets.
Wow, there is a very complete sizing guide here. Remarkably complete. Yeah, I am not even going to try to summarize this here. If it's something you're interested in, go take a look at the website there, especially... Wow, that is... Who can even fit into that? That is tiny!
Obviously not you or I.
No.
All right. But yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing some of these go on sale, and I'll probably pick up a few. So
yeah,
have a look out for that. Final Fantasy 16 news, guys. Yes, we do have Final Fantasy 16 news now. Let me get this copy.
So
go ahead.
As a result of that Uniqlo crossover event, they did have an interview with Naoki Yoshida in the company's in-store magazine. He did make a brief comment about Final Fantasy XVI. Translation provided by Twitter user Aitai Kimochi. Yoshida notes, we're in the final stages of development for the new numbered game in the series, Final Fantasy XVI. We aim to deliver a comprehensive game full of story and gameplay. Unlike an online game that involves many players at the same time, FF XVI offers a different experience where it focuses on the individual player and immerses you in the story. I think it's a very fleshed out story. For those who have grown up and realized that reality isn't kind to you and have drifted away from Final Fantasy, we hope that FF XVI will be a game that can bring back anew the passion passion you once had with the series. In other interviews, he mentioned that a new trailer is done and ready to go, but has been held back, though it did not really discuss why. Has promised to give Final Fantasy fans a new look at FF16 sometime this spring, so he's got like about 7 weeks to work that out.
Yep, it's got until the end of June.
Yep. There also was some additional FF16 news from the Nier Reincarnation stream. During that one, it said that the trailer is done and that it should drop soon again, that the dev team spent a long time polishing and debugging the game, and that at this point it is pretty much complete. What exactly that means, and I'm pretty sure that comment again got him in a lot of trouble with the marketing departments and the like, but it's definitely touched off a lot of speculation for when we might see a release.
Yeah, well, and it's also, he mentioned earlier last year that, there would be more news about the game in 2022, and we have not gotten any more news in 2022. So, of course, when people are have the opportunity to talk with him about whether it's, the Uniqlo crossover, whether it's Final Fantasy XIV or what, because he is also the producer on 16, he's going to get those questions asked of him as well, because we want to know. We care about this.
And because he's someone who really seems to enjoy working the crowd and getting those reactions, it's almost guaranteed he's going to drop something.
Yeah.
Oh, we love the little troll.
Well, I mean, I'm just happy.
He absolutely enjoys trolling the audience. You can't tell me otherwise.
Oh, he does, but I'm also happy for the fact that he actually does enjoy telling us what's going on in the development cycle, because prior to, I would say, 5 years ago, having developers give you regular updates on the progress of whether it's a patch, a new game, or whatever, was unheard of.
Yeah. I mean, just look at the whole thing with the housing lottery in FF14 recently, and how we got 5 updates, some of them at pretty good length, going into a lot of the technical details of what even caused the problem. That kind of thing would have been unimaginable a few years ago.
No, it's amazing that we're getting this much transparency with the development team. So I hope they continue to do this for the community and make sure that we are aware of the progress of certain things, because it's a property we love and we want to support it as much as possible. And the fact that they are
we want to get hype.
Exactly,
we want to get hype.
You're right, we do. We need something to look forward to. I mean, Lord knows,
it's been hard lately. Getting hype about something would be nice.
A little bit, yeah. So yeah, we linked a number of different articles there in regards to this, because we got a number of different sources talking about all of this information about Final Fantasy 16. So if you want to take a look at those, by all means, go ahead.
Definitely looking forward to that trailer and fleshing out some more of those details about
100%. I really want to see the trailer. And hopefully we can get a release date at that point, because if the game is basically done and they just need to do all of the tweaks, we're maybe a year out.
Well, then you also may have stuff like a lot of the logistics of distribution, which is no longer nearly as guaranteed a thing as it once was. Supply lines are still so messed up.
Yeah, but I mean, we're in a digital age, though. So for the fact that we'll be able to get a lot of these things readily through digital stores, that might,
comes with its own challenges, and it's certainly a little bit more complex than it used to be, but that is at least a bit of a blessing there.
I mean, when I usually buy Final Fantasy games, I usually buy physical editions because I like the collectability of them, and they are part of something that I have, not just to play the game, but it's my collection. Certain ones, like I'll probably end up getting Stranger of Paradise digitally on my PC, so I mean I'm less concerned about that, but having those physical copies of the mainline games is just kind of nice to have. So we'll see. We'll figure out how I want to go though.
And speaking of Stranger of Paradise, our next news item, the main character from that game, Jack Garland, is going to be joining the City of Final Fantasy Opera Omnia team. The event was just announced, and so we'll be launching in Japan soon. North America typically gets it about on a 6-month delay. plenty of time for us to do all the theory crafting, where Jack will be acting as a great sword user. All sorts of fun little details there. There's a lengthy trailer. Usually the character previews are like 2 or 3 minutes, but this is something like 5 minutes of some story scenes demonstrations of all of his various specialty abilities.
Well, I believe he's also coming out with a new mechanic that's being added to the Japanese game that you were talking about earlier, pre-show.
Oh no, so not quite. So what's coming, it is out in Japan. It hasn't come to North America yet. A type of weapon called a force weapon, where the character kind of has a group attack with someone else that adds a whole bunch of new mechanics and dynamics to it. But he does have, he as a new character being added, does have one where he's actually working with the Emperor from Final Fantasy II. The animation seems to show the Emperor deploying a trap attack onto Jack that he then uses to somehow launch it into the enemy. It's a bit of a weird dynamic, and given that the force weapons usually explore interesting team-ups of characters, having him working with one of the villain characters is a little unexpected.
Yeah, but if you think about where Jack Garland ends the game, it does make sense in that aspect. I mean, at least they're not pairing him up with future him.
Though there is a thing from the story scenes where they do show him facing off with and apparently having a conversation or argument or something with Final Fantasy I's Garland. A little bit awkward there.
That's funny. And speaking of funny, maybe funny, we'll see what you guys think of this one. Apparently, a number of Final Fantasy fans are stunned at a new statue of Tifa that is now available for pre-order. Now, note, this is not sanctioned or licensed by Square Enix.
This is fan work, I guess we could call it.
I wouldn't say fan work, but it's definitely for those of you who may not have heard of what happened in Italy. Apparently, during a what exactly it was like?
It was a meeting of the Italian Senate.
Yeah, so they were must have been talking about like video game violence or something involving video games or something.
Oh no, it was completely unrelated. This was I followed a lot of this story, but it was pretty much a governmental body holding a meeting on Zoom or some type of equivalent there, and as many of these governmental bodies tend to do, they were not as familiar with a lot of the basic security settings that one wants to use. And so someone who was not originally invited joined the meeting and started sharing their screen to present fairly explicit Cloud and Tifa pornography.
Oh my.
Yeah, this was pretty much just Zoom bombing, which 2 years in, you'd really think that they would have had their basic protocols set up to prevent this kind of thing. Well, it wasn't a year and a half, whatever. It had been long enough. They really should have known better. So ended up making plenty of news, lots of memes, all sorts of hilarious stuff. And now this statue, not exactly commemorate, I don't even know how to describe it, but with a bent over, spread leg Tifa suggestively posed against the Buster Sword. Apparently including versions with exchangeable costumes so that you could have her clothed or not. Why is this even a thing?
Because gamers.
Yeah,
people are thirsty for Tifa, apparently.
Apparently, and want a, like, resin statue. Is this what is it?
Yes, it is a resin statue. It's a 1/4 scale resin statue.
So that's gonna actually be pretty large.
So if there is a link to the pre-order in the article that was posted in the chat, I don't recommend this, but if you're really interested, it's only $730.
The pictures are not explicit, but at the same time are very clearly not work safe.
No.
So,
and there's probably a better than zero chance that Square Enix is going to just completely banhammer this. So,
yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some kind of legal action. Estimated shipping date March next year, so plenty of time for this to escalate. I'm gonna go with escalate.
yeah.
Why is this a thing? I know why this is a thing. This is a rhetorical question. The internet really is full of things.
Well, the internet is really, really great for porn. And now that song is stuck in everybody's heads. You're welcome.
All right, how about we move on to something slightly more not that.
But not any less problematic, realistically. Given the story from Final Fantasy X, but...
Okay, at no point does... I'm not even arguing this point. Keep going. Say words. Let's get to the soundtrack.
I just think it's fun how uncomfortable this whole story has kind of made you. So
it's not exactly uncomfortable, but there's some amount of like, can't you do better? No. This is the type of thing where it's like, this is not who we are. No, this is 100% who we are.
I mean,
the mask is off. I mean, you fuckers are thirsty. We get it.
Have you seen the modding community for Final Fantasy XIV?
Oh.
This is mild in comparison.
I am aware. I am aware.
Oh, all right. So let's go ahead and jump into that. So we have one more disc to go in the Final Fantasy X original soundtrack. So let's go ahead and start with our first song.
Yeah.
Does this calm you a little bit?
Yes.
Well, it should, because this theme plays in the Calm Lands. And it's called Yuna's Decision.
Yeah, the title doesn't exactly square with the kind of gentle pastoral nature of the piece.
But it also plays during Yuna's sphere, so that's probably where that's coming from, and I think it has to do with her decision to become a summoner.
Yeah. So yes, as a reminder, Yuna's sphere in this case is a sphere that Yuna recorded much earlier in the game that Tidus now gets the chance to watch, wherein she's talking a little bit about the journey, about her thoughts on things, about the experiences that she's already had and what she's looking forward to. And Tidus gets this, watches it now with the knowledge that she recorded all this, putting a brave face on the fact that she knew that she was going to be walking to her death.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Pretty shitty deal if you ask me, but...
Oh, absolutely. But yeah, there's kind of that interesting contrast of the heavy nature of it, but how for her this is just something that she's accepted, that she's at peace with. The Calm Lands give that name, of course, for the calm that comes from when sin is defeated. So there's kind of an interesting juxtaposition there of like what we see as a tragedy, but Yuna seems to see as this kind of like acceptance and peace that she's found through it.
And then we come along, or Tidus comes along and is like, screw that, that's bullshit. And then she's like, yeah, you're right, that's bullshit. And we fuck everything up.
She's not quite there yet.
Well...
But certainly he's been an unexpected element that doesn't go along with this whole thing, and does have her kind of looking at a lot of the decisions she's made, a lot of things she's doing with a different perspective.
Indeed. Let's go ahead and jump into our next tune. This is a theme for one of the party members who is very different from Yuna. almost kind of a polar opposite in many ways. Where Yuna is very young, naive, and what's the word I want here? Still very positive in a lot of her thoughts.
Yeah.
Lulu has a little bit more worldly experience, and she's kind of a counterpoint to Yuna, and she actually makes a very great addition to the party as far as being able to kind of give Yuna some advice.
Yeah. Lulu's theme here is played in the fight against Yojimbo. Now, Lulu, this is not her first stint as a guardian. She had acted as guardian to some before who did not complete their journey. There's a lot of kind of like reflection on regrets over the past that happened.
And I think the fact that she's completely aware as to the fate of the summoner really bothers her.
Yeah. There were 2 other summoners, not just one, that she guarded who did not make it to Xanarkand. And in fact, I had forgotten this detail, but the first summoner that she guarded, Lady Ginem, she was unable to save her in the Cavern of the Stolen Faith during an attempt to acquire the Aeon Yojimbo. So the battle against Yojimbo is a direct confrontation of Lulu's past failure. Lulu, of course, having an immense amount of guilt over her failure as a naive, inexperienced guardian herself.
So there's a lot that occurs during this portion of the game where we're learning more about each of the characters as their story rolls on, and kind of why they're at the point where they're at, and a lot of exposition.
One of the things that does come up in the course of the game, of course, is that Lulu did not want Yuna to become a summoner either, knowing not only what would be at the end, but all the various fates that could befall her along the way. But once she realized that Yuna would not be dissuaded from it, Lulu became her guardian in part to try to protect her from sin. Kind of, well, if you're going on this, I at least want to make sure that you see it through to the end and don't throw your life away.
Very true.
So, yeah, she has a lot of that kind of darker, more mature vibe. A lot of the past tragedy is a big element in her character. We also see stuff of like her relationship with Wakka through Wakka's brother Chapu, who Lulu had been in love with, and who also perished fighting sin. So Lulu is someone who's seen a lot of people go before her.
And now she wears a lot of belts.
I mean, that's just weird character design stuff.
Anyway, speaking of weird characters, this is the theme that plays at the Monster Arena, run by a rather weird character out in the Calmlands. But this is called Bravely Forward. So how do I want to word this? Any soul brave enough to go and capture monsters out on the field can then use special weapons to ensnare them, and then they get sent to the monster arena, and you can then go back and fight them. The more you capture, the more different ones get unlocked, and you actually are able to unlock some of the hardest battles within the game through this particular minigame.
It's very clearly side content, not required for the game. At the same time, it is something that unlocks some of the really strong access to really strong items, really challenging fights for the people who really want to challenge themselves. That opening definitely having a little bit of a fanfare aspect, as if announcing the arrival of a gladiator on the Blood Sands.
Did you end up ever beating Nemesis?
I don't think I managed Nemesis. Was Nemesis in the original, or was that just in the international?
I don't remember, but I do recall it being the most difficult of the different sub bosses you could fight. Like, it's not the end game boss, but just a kind of a optional boss.
I think I may have it. It's been so long, I would have to. But I know I definitely filled out the entirety of the Monster Arena because I was even more of a completionist back then.
Yeah, and it was so easy to do too. I mean, you just get Titus, Waka, and Auron their trainer weapons, and you just run around and you just capture everything. It's real slick.
I believe you did have to deal the killing blow with the weapon itself, which meant that the mages weren't quite as good for it. Having run up and bonk someone with their staff never works quite as well.
No, definitely. I'm just looking through here, and it doesn't say that it wasn't in the original version, so
I may have been and just don't remember it. It's been so long. But yeah, it's kind of an arena theme type thing. You've got a little bit of that tension. This, of course, is the music more like when you're at the entrance preparing for fights, not the actual battle music. So it doesn't have the liveliness that a battle theme would.
I think you might be thinking there were some dark aeons added to the international and HD versions, which were more difficult, but
Nemesis, and I may have actually cleared Nemesis.
Yeah, Nemesis was in the original game. He's kind of a golden skinned version of Ultima Weapon.
Sounds vaguely familiar. It has been nearly 20 years.
Very, very true. It has. All right.
Oh, what a weird thought. Oh, it's another hymn of the faith.
It is indeed. And we were talking about this particular one just a few moments ago. This is the faith for Yojimbo. Yojimbo was is found in the Cavern of the Stolen Faith, which means it's kind of optional. I don't know if he was necessarily required for completing the pilgrimage.
Not required.
But he also it has a very different mechanic, whereas you can normally just call any Aeon you want that you have unlocked, and they will fight with you. Yojimbo wants that gil, yo.
Yeah. Yojimbo is at this point a recurring character in the series, but Final Fantasy X was his first appearance. The name literally means bodyguard, and so that ended up being the inspiration for his mechanic, wherein rather than giving direct orders, you pay his fee, and then he uses attacks based on the fee that you've paid. Over time, of course, as you continue to pay him, it would keep track of internal relationship values, and you could get him to start using better attacks more and more consistently.
Yep. And Yojimbo is basically a Ronin, or a masterless samurai, who kind of wanders around, and will fight for whoever has would pay him the most. And and that's kind of how he's been portrayed throughout the rest of the series, or his other appearances within Final Fantasy as well.
Yeah, lots of his visual motifs play along with this Ronin portrayal. One thing to note, the Cavern of the Stolen Faith, it was indeed a side quest, and in conversation with the characters, you find that I forget if it was specifically Albed, or just people who wanted to stop the pilgrimages had stolen the faith and brought it to that cavern, hoping that having it pulled out would disrupt them and cause summoners to be unable to finish the pilgrimage. They, of course, were not successful in this. The pilgrimages did continue even with the faith having been moved.
Indeed. And for those of you who are only familiar with the 14 version, this one does not have anything to do with Gilgamesh. Oh, Hildebrand. What are we going to do with you? Let's instead move on to this. A more primal and tribal sounding theme. This is Servants of the Mountain. This literally translates in Japanese to Northern Tribe. The tribe they're referring to is the Ronso.
The Ronso make Mount Gagazet as their home, the mountain that lies between the Calmlands and Zanarkand. So they are the tribe that guards the holy remains of the ruins of Zanarkand. That was redundant. Oh well.
Go team redundancy team.
Woo! Yeah, Mount Gagazet, of course, being a fairly harsh environment. The Ronso being a race that traditionally keeps to themselves, very focused on their sacred duty. A lot of those kinds of tropes.
Yep. And they are also very, very hairy. they're a bestial style tribe. In 14, the Hrothgar are based off of the Ronso.
Yes,
design.
They in fact are called Ronso when you're on the first.
Yes.
And in 14 they did specifically add options to the character creator so that you could make an equivalent of Kimahri. Kimahri, of course, being an outcast of his tribe, who, to our eyes, still has a lot of their traits, but his kinsmen talk about him being like so much more just different, like having been like kind of tainted by the outside world. In fact, one of the first things you do out Mount Gagazet is have a confrontation with two of his enemies within the tribe.
Yeah, Biran and Yenki. They are
references to them show up in FF14 as well.
Yep, and I believe Kimahri was ousted from the tribe because he had to have his horn cut off because of something that he had done to protect somebody that he didn't believe what was happening was right, and that caused him to be considered an outcast and expelled from the tribe. So,
yep. Yenki and Biran taunt him with the name of Hornless, reflecting his outcast status.
Yeah. But, realistically, he's a badass with a heart of gold.
He is also the game's blue mage, and the fight against Biran and Yenki offers opportunities to learn a large batch of techniques, as a number of the Ronso use blue magic skills.
Yeah, he's a blue mage and a lancer. So he does a lot of floor tanking too. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into the next Hymn of the Faith. While this Hymn of the Faith does not stand for any particular Aeon, this one is for the entirety of the Ronso because of their sacred duty to protect the path to Zanarkand.
So after Kimahri's defeat of Biran and Yenki, as the party is allowed through to cross Mount Gagazet, they are sung on their way by the entirety of the tribe.
This is kind of their best wishes for the summoner and her guardians as safe travels and blessing for them to hopefully complete the pilgrimage. So it's kind of a
once
nice
again a
thing.
very somber moment.
Somber, yet they do it, with pride in their hearts as well. Next. In English, this song is called Wandering, but the literal translation from Japanese is Wandering Flame. This song plays during a number of cutscenes where Titus is observing a number of tragedies happening within Spira. Also plays as background theme at the Zanarkand Dome. and in the far plane when Waka is speaking to his brother Shapu. So this is kind of a very somber, sad, and melancholic song to kind of go with those moments.
The name Wandering is interesting because we've had like the pilgrimage as kind of, it's a journey, but it's a very directed journey with a clear purpose. And then for Wandering, you have just kind of this like aimless thing. It's still the traveling, but in a very different way. So having that as a title is an interesting choice.
Well, if you think about it, Titus is very much, not... Well, we know he's not of this world. Spoiler alert.
Right.
So his introduction and his part in this is kind of, he's designed to make them come off of their normal path and kind of take a wider look at things. See things, not from the way they have been taught for so many years, that summoners have to do this and they have to then take care of defeating sin and basically prolong this entire endless loop of calm and sin. So
yeah, he is a very disruptive element in that way. You're right. Something that again takes that very focused pilgrimage and turns it into a little bit of a broader wandering across, like kind of shaking out of the routine to look at how sad and tragic this entire cycle is.
Exactly.
Something that had become largely invisible to a lot of the people of Seyrr. Like, of course, they were saddened by it, but also just, this is the way that things are.
Yes, this is the way. Except they didn't wear helmets and have Beskar armor. Come on, Final Fantasy is just the biggest Star Wars retelling. It's all Star Wars tropes. It's all the same. Come on.
If I don't acknowledge it, maybe he'll stop talking.
I'm just gonna dig for that particular meme, and I'll read it on the air.
So anyway.
All right, let's go ahead. We'll continue on, and we'll go to the next one.
But yeah, it's kind of a good all-purpose sad piece.
This song, you'll note, has a lot of themes from some of the other main themes of Final Fantasy X.
Yeah, definitely a lot of that Suteki Dane energy.
Yep, this is called A Fleeting Dream, or in Japanese, the literal translation is a dream that will end someday. It first plays when Titus and Yuna are talking about Jekt for the first time. It is the main theme on the Zanarkand Ruins Road, and it also does play after the failed Operation Mihen and after defeating Braska's final Aeon as Jekt and Titus reconcile.
Yeah,
so,
it's kind of... Like, you've got a lot of those elements of Suteki Dane, but where that one is a thing of, like, kind of, hey, wouldn't this be nice? Here's this dream that we have of how things that could be. And this is talking, taking the whole idea of this dream as something that is fleeting, something that will end. Wouldn't it be nice if this, but also it can't be. This is just a dream. This is something that we speculated about or thought would be nice, but it's not real. So it's got that really beautifully tragic element to it.
But something you strive for, but you cannot attain. Just kind of like winning the lottery. It'd be very nice, but you'll never do it. But wouldn't it be nice to think about? It's just kind of nice to hear the different instruments playing that, very melodic theme.
Yeah. Hearing this as you make your way through the Zanarkand ruins, it carries a lot of the weight of the journey. Like, there is a certain weightiness to this piece.
And if I remember correctly, doesn't this theme actually persist into battles as well?
Yep, there is not separate battle music. It continues throughout the whole thing. So in some ways, it does become almost oppressive. There's no escaping it.
Well, we can escape it by moving on to the next one. A very, very different sounding Hymn of the Faith. This is the one for Unileska.
Oh, there's that minor key.
Lots of dissonance in this particular version. It's very haunting in a very disconcerting way.
Mm-hmm. We do, of course, learn that Unileska, we had learned much earlier that Unileska was the first summoner, and her husband had been the first final Aeon. And so she is now the one who provides leads the arriving summoners at the end of their pilgrimage to summon the final Aeon that will defeat Sin.
Yes, and it's a very sad and disturbing tale when we actually get the truth behind it, which is why this particular version is very...
Yeah, that dissonance in the last bit of it, the first time I heard it, I felt like something is off here.
Absolutely. But then we get into Challenge. This is basically a high-end boss theme.
Yeah. This is the one not just for bosses, but for incredibly significant bosses.
And incredibly difficult bosses. Like the second time we fight Sin-Spawn Gui, Seymour Flux, the aforementioned Unileska, Omega Weapon, as well as Dark Bahamut.
Freaking Unileska, I remember back then I was struggling against her. I ended up going back and grinding a lot to get Yuna Holy, figuring, okay, she's close to it. Holy is traditionally a super strong spell. This will help me finally get through that. And then it turns out that Unileska absorbs Holy. Wah, wah. The worst.
Yeah. But yeah, you can... Go ahead.
There's some stuff about this that reminds me a little bit of like we had with Otherworld, where it's like, hey, here's some like strange alien aspects to it, some stuff that's been kind of more hard driving stuff as opposed to what we'd seen that made Otherworld kind of the, okay, this is not of this world very literally. I feel like we're getting some similar elements to that here as well.
Well, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, we're learning about, more the beginnings of the Yu Yevon religion, by having to now face Unileska here, and coming to terms with the fact that this entire religion is basically based off of a lie.
Yeah.
And it's designed to self-perpetuate itself just for the fact that it will continue to control the planet.
It provides people with hope, even if it turns out to be false hope. Because the belief of pretty much everyone involved is that sin is cannot truly be defeated. The best we can do is to stave it off for a time and to give people the hope they need to not collapse utterly into despair. But anything more than that. And so this is, that entire twisted system made manifest. Because, as I've said, like, one of the reasons I think Yuna is one of the most badass Final Fantasy heroines. When she gets confronted with that reality, she says, no. I was willing to sacrifice myself for all this, but now that I've seen that this is just going to provide false hope, this is not something I'm willing to die for.
Nope, she wants to actually do the correct job that she was chosen for, and not just, you know, play her puppet part in this ongoing farce.
Yeah. Some of this does seem like she was at least inspired by traveling with Tidus, and hearing him being the one person who, with the outside perspective, hadn't totally given up hope to this system, was the one who would say, hey, isn't there some other way to do this?
It is kind of weird, though, that through all these different pilgrimages, that somebody else didn't, you know, notice something was a little bit off.
Yeah. And it's also possible that they disagreed with it and then got killed by Unileska.
Yeah, we don't really know. The only thing we know is, well, we'll get to that here in a little bit.
But yeah, the fight itself, and of all the fights we're going to see, it's usually ones that are long, drawn-out slogs, often involving very dangerous mechanics.
Yes.
Since Mangui involving the Operation Mihen having just gone down in flames, and then dealing with a multi-part boss with all sorts of dangerous bits that need to be managed. The Unileska fight involving zombie and instant death attacks. These are fights where there's a lot going on, and it really ratchets up the tension.
Indeed. Let's go ahead and jump into our next tune. It's an oddly upbeat song for where this plays. It's called Beyond the Darkness, but this plays in the exterior of the Omega Ruins. But it also plays the first time you ride within the airship. So, I mean, that's a hopeful bit. You know, it maybe signifies that you are able to get outside of that which is, you know, consuming not only you, but the entire world of Spira, you know, this dark plague that's of sin.
Yeah, there's also a kind of like exploratory aspect to it.
Indeed.
Part of that, of course, being like when first going off on the airship or going to the Omega Ruins, which, without the assistance of a guide, involves putting together a lot of clues from a lot of different points. Yeah, that is one of the things about having the airship being a list of places to select. You can't just freely wander around and find a thing. Most of them involve like saying, hey, I want to go to a special spot, and then inputting the password gained from doing batches of side quests.
Yeah, I don't really remember that bit. I'm sure I went through it, but I mean, it's just one of those things that maybe I just choose to not remember.
Yeah. Also, I am imagining that a fair number of people just went and looked it up.
That too. Well, I do have the guide, so. I mean, that was the thing. You always bought the guide when you bought these games, right?
Yep. You go to GameStop, you have your pre-order. They're like, hey, you want to get the guide as well? And it's like a special collector's edition guide, which means you have to have it.
Yeah.
Because you're a fan of it.
And it's 20% off if you buy it today.
Ah, memories.
Hey, I really did enjoy, you know, going through a lot of those. Probably
absolutely. Like, I read those on car trips.
The most pointless one, though, was the Final Fantasy XI one.
Final Fantasy IX was up there.
Yeah. Well, the fact that it pointed you to play online.
Yeah. Like, the FF11 one was listed as like spring of 2002 or like, it was clear that the intention was that they were going to be providing like updated guides every so often,
and they never did.
I think those, I mean, this was like, MMOs were still relatively new, like having a mainstream MMO, and I don't think people had realized that the traditional written guides just wouldn't work for that.
Yeah.
I want to say there was a World of Warcraft one that was like a binder with the idea being that you could buy supplements that would add new pages.
But then things like Alakazam and Killing Ifrit and those types of sites, the wiki-style sites, really started to take off about that time, making the need for a written guide actually pointless.
Yeah. Also, I don't think those written guides ever really grasped or worked with the way patch and update cycles actually end up working.
Yeah. Completely unrelated to Beyond the Darkness, but still. Just one of those little things that we always seem to do is sidetrack ourselves like that, but...
Hey, there's a lot of memories here.
Exactly. Let's go ahead and jump into the next one.
I certainly remember running into Tunberries down in the Omega Ruins.
Your best friends.
Tun buddies.
Tun buddy! This is called Gloom. You get this this song plays after Yuna receives Bahamut at Bethel Temple. It also plays inside the Omega Ruins. So as you're trying to avoid your Tan buddies, doinking you, you've got this playing in the background.
Yeah. The acquisition of Bahamut, of course, comes immediately after the escape from the wedding, so it's certainly a thing where there's still a bit of a tense situation. You're in enemy territory. It's not the occasion for celebration that the acquisition of an Aeon normally would have been.
Well, I also believe
I am loving that percussion.
Was there something a little bit more saddened, with the story behind Bahamut's faith?
So Bahamut's faith is a young boy, the one who's been cryptically appearing throughout the game.
And there was some sort of sad story involved with them, I believe, correct?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it makes sense that this is kind of a gloomy understanding, I guess.
Yeah, gloomy is not quite the word, because there's, again, that percussion is definitely adding that sense of tension again. Which also fits again with the interior of the Omega Ruins, where you've got kind of unseen dangers to it. In both cases, also some amount of hoping to avoid being noticed by the things that dwell within. Whether that be the fiends of the Omega Ruins, or the very, very angry church officials of Bavel.
Well, you did just kind of make a mess of, the master's wedding.
These things happen.
Well, the fact that the groom was dead, though, you kind of had to do something. And then learning that everybody else was dead, too. Or unsent, I guess.
Let's move on to the next piece.
Alrighty then.
So by the time...
Go ahead.
By the time this Hymn of the Faith is sung, a lot has happened. We have defeated and destroyed Unileska, her last words being proclaiming of our doom as without her, the final Aeon can no longer be summoned, and thus there is no way to pacify Sid's wrath. We, of course, refuse, after everything that's happened, refusing to accept this, seeking a way forward, have created a new plan to confront Sin, taking advantage of his nature as Jecht and the knowledge that we have of him. And so leading the entirety of Spira in singing the Hymn of the Faith, something that we had seen before did seem to calm and pacify Sin for a time.
Yes. So this is the Hymn of the Faith for the entirety of Spira.
Yeah, no longer being sung by the dead, by those spirits locked away in the faith, but being sung by its living people.
Yes, the ones that we as the summoner and her guardians are trying to save.
Yeah. Given how much Spira has been ruled metaphorically and literally by the dead, having this as something where the living are taking a hand in the world's future is kind of this first step on this changed path for Spira.
Indeed. Next up, we have A very spoopy song. This is called the Unsent Laugh, or the Japanese literal translation, the dead person laughs. In this case, the dead person being Seymour.
We did have some elements of this before. I think it was with Seymour's theme.
It's kind of like a half prelude.
Yeah.
We only get the ascending portion of it. We don't get the downward completion of it though, which makes it very, very unsettling. And the fact that it's in a minor key doesn't help either.
Yeah. With the previous themes, there it is. I was waiting for that bit to come in.
Gotcha.
Yeah, again, was it specifically? This is definitely a redone version of one of the earlier themes. I'm just trying to remember exactly which one it was, but it has a lot of those things just kind of as a reprise of it. At this point, we are moving through Sin, but yeah. So we've encountered Seymour within Sin. We do have some of those otherworldly aspects to it combined with that theming of him, kind of the Seymour in this greatly as someone who has kind of seized the reins of death.
Or so he wants us to think. All right, let's go ahead and jump into our next one. This is one of our big battle themes right now. This is called Fight with Seymour, which plays as we're fighting Seymour Omnis within Sin.
I think the Black Mages covered this one sometime back.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So it's kind of got the whole otherworldly theme. So, you know, the fact that Seymour is unsent and should actually be out on the far plane. So it's kind of got those vibes of those far plane vibes.
Yeah. In addition to the fact that when we went inside Sin, rather than being inside the guts of a creature, we again have found some type of weird, extra-dimensional, metaphysical space. Like, this is the point where it's becoming peak Final Fantasy again.
Yep. I mean, this fight did kind of have similar vibes to when you're fighting, you know, brain, think, come on, Sephiroth, and you know, in Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah. I mean, is it a Final Fantasy game if you don't go to some weird extra-dimensional metaphysical space to fight against a ascended concept? In this case, involving little rotating wheels with elemental colors. So a little bit of like almost a puzzle fight aspect to it in terms of needing to manage the element that Seymour is becoming. As the elemental wheels behind him rotate, his elemental aspect, including his weaknesses and what he'll be barraging you with, change.
Yep. But yeah, I don't think we can get away with fighting an ascended being that's kind of, you know, naked from the torso up, so.
Yeah, it's a thing.
I mean, we get that with Sephiroth, we get it with Seymour here. Well, we even get it with, in 8, with the one sorceress.
Ultimis, or Adele.
Adele, yes. Which was very uncomfortable, by the way.
Oh, yeah. that was, I believe, very intentionally so unsettling fight.
Yeah. I mean, this is a banger tune.
Oh, absolutely. And I can see why the Black Mages decided to cover it.
I mean, if you listen to it, it has a lot of similar feelings to the Kefka theme, Dancing Mad. Because you get a little bit of organ, you get some of these different sounding instruments that are playing back there. It just kind of raises similar, feelings as you're trying to fight this demigod who's hell-bent on destroying you.
Yep.
Insert random Final Fantasy game here.
The Sephiroth comparison is interesting because Seymour sees his motivations as being much more... He sees himself as doing a good thing, as rescuing people from a cycle of misery and death. Like the cycle of misery by bringing the peace of death.
Whereas Sephiroth was trying to reunite the thing that crashed into Midgar, or into the planet there many, many years ago. And yeah, with Sephiroth there was always a little bit of a question as to, because we knew Jenova was this thing that had this driver for it, and a question of how much it had taken over Sephiroth and how much Sephiroth had subverted it. A little bit of both.
Yeah, it was always a bit of a strange situation.
Speaking of which, I really want part 2 to come out soon.
Here we have Seymour, this kid who was born as this thing of hope, who has instead become the symbol of despair, of the spiral of death, and of surrendering to death as a way to attain peace. So again, this kind of twisted world of death that Spear is, he's this personification of its extreme end.
What is it with Final Fantasy antagonists and pairs?
Not taking the bait. Not taking the bait.
Damn it. So let's go ahead and move on then. This Hymn of the Faith is probably one of the saddest. This is the one for Anima. Kind of a broken faith. Who is based off of, I believe it's actually Seymour's mother.
Yep. So with those cloisters of trials, with a hidden zone that can be found in each one, if you were able to find all of them, then you could return to that temple that Tidus washed up back at the very, very beginning. And this time, make your way through to the Chamber of the Faith to find the faith for Anima, who, as you said, was Seymour's mother, who Seymour had completed the pilgrimage himself, had his own mother transformed into the faith for the final Aeon. Seymour, who had struggled so much with the prejudices, with being this person who's expected to unite these two people, and instead became a target for both of them, and who ended up having to give up his sole protector, his mother.
And then imprisoned her as a faith at that point then.
Yep, that was part of the process. Unilesko transforms one of the Guardians into the faith. That will serve as the thing for the final Aeon. But instead of going to fight sin, Seymour seemed to have been broken by the experience and instead set out on this path to bring the peace of death to all of Spira. And we see that with Anima, who knows what happens, who sees what her son has become, and who begs us to end his madness. She had wanted to protect him so much, and she sees what has become of it, so she knows what has to be done.
And if I remember correctly, she was human while his father was Guado?
Correct.
Okay. All right.
So yeah, that voice singing there, it's a hymn of the faith, but it is a sorrowful version of it.
And it's Seymour's mom singing it.
Yep.
Coming next, we have a contest of Aeons.
Yuna is periodically challenged by another summoner to Aeon battle.
Well, this one is actually plays when she has to battle her Aeons.
Oh. Is it? Oh, okay.
Yeah, this isn't the one where she's fighting that other summoner.
Belgamine, yeah.
Yeah. Where this one, like I said, at a point in the game, she is forced to fight against the Aeons that she herself has earned. And she fights against them, and it's kind of it's bittersweet. You know, she doesn't want to have to fight them, but it's part of the whole process.
Yeah, you've got that hymn of the faith aspect to it. Because pretty much, like, we learned about the nature of sin, and one of the things we had learned was that the previous when sin is defeated, that which animates it at its core moves to the final Aeon that was able to defeat it, takes over that, and molds that into the new sin. And so, as part of the process, in order to end the cycle permanently, we're forced to fight those Aeons, destroy each one of them, until that animating core has nothing left to inhabit. It is emotionally a bit rough. Fun fact, if you have a sensor weapon, the type that normally has the scan effect that allows you to get information about the weaknesses and a little bit of details, and you're using it in the fight as you fight against each of those Aeons, you get to see a last message from them to Yuna.
Interesting.
Yeah, in case your heart wasn't ripped out enough already.
So it's quite a tragic battle theme at that point, so.
Yeah.
Also quite long, because there's a lot of Aeons to fight. I mean, at this point, we've gathered 8 of them, I think.
So some of them are optional, so it depends on how many you've done, and the battle will actually be slightly different lengths as a result.
Is there 6 basic ones?
So let's see, Valifor, Ifrit, Shiva, Ixion, Bahamut.
Okay, so
those are the only ones that you have to get.
Okay, and then the optional ones being Yojimbo, Anima,
and the Magus Sisters.
Okay. So I was correct that there were 8, but for some reason I thought there were 6 base ones. But it's just thunder, fire, ice.
And 2 non-elemental ones.
Oh, there are non-elemental, okay.
Yeah. There is, in fact, not a water Aeon.
Yeah, which is kind of weird.
Yeah. No one person can cover all the things.
Okay, let's go ahead and jump into the next one. Nick Narn in chat saying Sin is the water Aeon.
Oh my god, kind of. Yeah.
This is the aptly named final battle. This plays at the start of the game. No, this plays during the final battle against Yu Yevon.
Yeah. At this point, all of the Aeons have been defeated. There is nothing left for him. Yu Yevon itself, his mind went long, long ago, and all that is there is this drive to summon. It's practically a mercy kill.
It's a crazy battle, too.
Yep. It's happening on a giant version of Jack's sword.
And it's very,
it's like
very
all sorts
long.
of stuff streaming. Yeah.
Multi-phase. And I think I ended up having to grind quite a bit in order to basically cheese it a little bit.
Yeah. My recollection is that the entire party gets auto re-raise that can't be dispelled, but it can just run a very long time, and so grinding a little bit just to speed the whole thing up is not a terrible idea.
Well, plus, you know, for those of us who like to, do crazy things and max level characters, get through the entire sphere grid, get all of the ultimate weapons.
There's something kind of fun about having Yuno run up and bonk the end deity with her staff and having it fall apart.
Yeah, I mean, especially when it actually does, decent damage.
Oh yeah, like I knew someone who's running up and bonking someone with the staff would do damage cap.
And I want to say,
Yuna's been lifting.
In this game, the damage cap, you can actually raise it to 100,000. I think 99999 or 99999. Yes.
5 nines.
Yes. If you hit the overdrive, I believe, and I think all of the ultimate weapons have overdrive.
Or overdrive was the limit break equivalent. There was a thing specifically called break damage limit that all of them had natively. Man, you've got a lot of crazy stuff going on in this song.
Well, you're fighting a crazy dead deity.
Lots of piano runs there.
Mm-hmm. Let's just pick that up a little bit so we can kind of hear some of the subtleties.
The sheer bizarreness of you, Yevon.
What is it about these final battle themes that just gets your blood pumping? Makes you ready to just, destroy deities and save the world.
Yeah. It's kind of like, okay, it is the last thing, throw everything you've got at it, hold nothing back. I don't know how you code that in music, but they generally manage to do it. There's kind of a desperate, almost frenetic aspect to it.
Yep, I can just imagine the person playing the piano, just their arms flailing as they're going up and down the keyboard. Just the energy put into that as your characters on screen are, swinging their swords as hard as they can and casting Ultima and doing all the crazy stuff there. It's your final, fight to save the planet, to save your friends, to let everybody have one more day. It's because he didn't hold back. Sorry, I had to throw the Waterboy reference in.
Anyway, shall we continue?
I suppose we can. We are basically towards the end here. So we aptly have the ending theme. Guess when this plays. Well, it starts right after we defeat you, Yevon. So there's a little bit of the exposition here, so it's a very kind of sinister and unsure. Then we kind of get this peaceful bit.
Yeah,
indeed it would, Nick. Our final battle would be awesome to hear at a new world, or even at distant worlds.
Yeah, I believe at this point it's a movie type thing. Like the music is synced up with the action happening, which is why you often get a little bit more variation. It's not something that necessarily needs to loop any amount.
But as you can hear, there's a little bit of Hymn of the Faith right there.
even more minor keyed.
Yep. Yeah, so basically at this point, the credits are rolling. The final FMV is playing after we defeat the boss. I don't recall much of it, to be honest with you. Other than I think, doesn't Titus basically end up disappearing?
Sort of. So one of the things that was found out was that the entirety of Old Zanarkand was a recreation of a faith made up of a huge number of people that were kind of doing a summoning to create an entire city. Tidus and Jecht had both been from that version, which is why it's often referred to as the Dream City of Zanarkand. It is literally a dream of these faith that had been maintained for this entire time. The defeat of Sin means, and of destruction of Yu Yevon means the end of this summoning that had gone on for 1,000 years, and with that, the summon kind of collapses, returns to, and so Tidus himself as a character that he had thought that, like, okay, he journeyed 1,000 years into the future, and no, he had just been like this kind of fragment of a dream the whole time. And so knowing at the last battle that this was what was going to happen, as the last of these remnants are vanishing, he himself starts to fade away as well. There's a really tragic reversal in that, because with this entire pilgrimage, originally Tidus had been the one who said, okay, we're going to find this way to do this, and Yuna had been the one who had resolved and accepted her death. And then you have a reversal between them, where it's now Tidus is the one who accepted his death, where Yuna had seen it as a, no, there's something we can get through with all of us living.
She was hoping that by going through this, that she would be able to break it and Tidus would be able to stay with. But yeah, unfortunately,
she in fact was not aware of the whole thing where he was this dream aspect. That was something that Tidus found out privately and withheld from the entire group.
Yep. Well, I think maybe he was hoping that that by going through all this and completing it, maybe once all is said and done, but
partly that, but also just partly
he's accepting his fate.
Yeah, and he had been in it for Yuna. Yeah. Like a big part of the game is the love story between them. Like Tidus choosing to die or fade away for Yuna, and Yuna choosing to live for Tidus. It's like, it's a really beautiful love story. It has those elements of tragedy in it.
As most do.
Yeah.
And basically at this point, I think Yuna has basically resolved to continue on.
Yeah. There's an interesting variation in like the translation of at the last bit where Yuna realizes that this is goodbye. I believe in the Japanese she says I love you, but in the English she says thank you. I never had the impression that she didn't love him. It's just, I think the significance of saying those words and like when it's done, like culturally, there's a little bit of a difference there. Like the thank you, I think still conveys that, just it's kind of in a different way.
Right.
Fun talk about localization there.
Yep. This next bit is an audio clip from the Japanese version of the game.
一つだけお願いがあります。いなくなってしまった人たちのこと、時々でいいから思い出してください。
I think that kind of speaks to what you were just saying there, Seyrr. This is part of Yuna's speech to the people of Spira, where she's basically talking to them about what happened, and yeah.
She's the first high summoner who came back. And so yeah, it has a sequence at Lucas Blitzball Stadium as like the one big place that's enough to pack in all the crowds. It has all of the sound system, all of that, where she's talking to the, and there's a bit more of that speech, but they only had those lines in the soundtrack, which plays like, I believe, over as the screen has gone black, and where she's exhorting the people to remember those that we did lost, all that we did sacrifice. Say, yes, we have gotten this calm, the eternal calm, but to never forget everything that we did lose getting here.
Yep.
And we know that has a special significance to her because she is thinking of one very specific person.
Exactly. And the final track of the Final Fantasy X original soundtrack is a reprise, the orchestral version of Suteki Dane. Beautiful song.
Mm-hmm.
In order to avoid getting completely copyright struck at this point, I'm going to go ahead and, as we've done with a number of the other soundtracks, go ahead and read through the liner notes translated from the original Japanese and talk a little bit about what Uematsu-san himself wrote when he was creating these songs for Final Fantasy X. I realized that the Final Fantasy series had already gone into its 10th installment. If I think back 14 years from now, way back in 1987, that was the day Final Fantasy I was first announced. I started producing for the game when I was about 27 years old. Now I'm almost 42. Wow. Damn.
Let's not think about that bit too hard, okay?
Well, I'm 43 right now.
Let's not think about that bit too
hard. Life is long, and I'm not young anymore. I remember back during my junior high school days, embracing my favorite pop star idols such as Elton John, Paul McCartney, etc. It was a time of being carefree. As I grew out of that stage in my life, I sort of lost touch with their music. Recently, as planned, I started listening to the music of these great artists again, calmly all alone by myself. I went to compare my own works with the music of my idols as a measure of the level of accomplishment my works have reached. For my case, there are some which are great and some that are not so, but all my idols' works are just brilliant, and not a single one that sounds blemished. I feel that the best music comes from the hippie era of the 70s, where people express themselves fully through the sound of music. But on a previous occasion, while I was driving in my car, I was tuning the bass level of a particular song and realized other fine nuances of other instruments that made up that song. The song is sheer genius, I said to myself, shocked at the accidental discovery. I went on to experiment the same procedure with CDs of other artists, muting off the piano rhythm. It's easy to mistake the music progression. I tried this again CD after CD, weaning out those great works apart from the bad ones. It really has become my latest obsession, really. You can pick up traces where the artists were not prepared enough or were not in the right mind to perform or sing. These evidences recorded down forever. Of course, pop stars are human too, but I do feel a little sad that these so-called idols of my past, whom I thought were perfect, actually faltered. As if I was God high up in the sky, calmly and rationally judging these artists' failures. Of course, these people left behind a legacy and inspired better artists following along their paths. But whoever emerges with true worth is like a race where everyone starts off together at the start line and struggles towards the goal. I felt myself standing among those at that starting line. The possibility of me writing songs in the style of the Beatles remains open. As I worked on the music of Final Fantasy X, maybe I can find out for myself the direction where my music is heading for the future. A pity it isn't, not knowing where my music stands until now. He has some really interesting thoughts in his head, doesn't he?
Seriously. Oh.
I love reading these notes, getting into the mind of Uematsu.
It's interesting how differently he views his own work from how we view it, I feel like.
Well, I mean, he is right. Not every one of his songs is an absolute banger.
Sure.
But...
And I know a lot of artists are their own harshest critics.
Exactly. But the fact that he has been so prolific and so in his career has been so, has spanned for multiple decades, and he is going to be thought of as one of the greatest, video game music composers, even one of the best music composers in our time. I mean, the fact that video game music has actually made it into the mainstream says a lot. I mean, the fact, games have been bringing in music from, pop culture for a while now, but the fact that the games or the music that was designed for games is now, going into some of those, the pop culture references, shows and,
it's
movies.
one of the things where the boundaries between have started to fall away.
Mm-hmm. And that you don't have to be a video game nerd to recognize a song from a video game.
Yeah. Oh, my dad was saying the classical station he listens to, they have like a yearly listener poll with like favorite pieces, and some of video game pieces have started to make it onto the list.
Well, I mean, there's some goddamn amazing songs that are have been created by some fabulously talented composers, and it's just the fact that they're getting their due now. It's not just for this thing that was seen as, a time waste by many people. Why do these people playing video games all the time?
Right.
It's become more accepted now, and everything from that is, it's just amazing the direction that we've been able to move in the last 30 years when it comes to this technology.
There's a lot I would not have predicted and expected, and I'm very happy to have been here for it.
Absolutely. But that, my friends, is the Final Fantasy X original soundtrack. So our next episode, like I said, we're going to be jumping back into Final Fantasy XIV, discussing our spoiler-filled thoughts on patch 6.1. So we'll take a little bit of a break from the soundtracks, and I think we're going to end up jumping into Final Fantasy XII next. As much as I would love to jump into 10.2 or 11, they have different spots that I think we should look at them at.
Agreed on that front. There's some complicated stuff going on with the both of them. In the case of FF11, we absolutely would need to do a selection, because otherwise we could have like a 10-hour show and still not get anywhere through.
No. I mean, we could do a year's worth of podcasts on the Final Fantasy XI soundtracks, I think.
Yeah. There's a lot there.
And 10.2, as good as it is, it's very short.
A lot of it borrows from FF from the 10 soundtrack, and just has some bits that are added on for the additions.
Yep. And I think with that, we'll end up doing some of the sequels at a later date. Like we'll probably get into 13.2 and 13.3 as well. 13.2 especially.
13-2 absolutely has some bangers, but that's another one that
and again,
let's save that for after we finish the main line.
Yep, they riff quite a bit off of the main game, so they use a lot similar things, but the things that they do with it are very nice. 13.3 very different from all of them, but and then same with 14. We'll end up making that kind of a best of show as well, because that one would definitely be at least 1.5 to 2 years worth of shows.
Also slightly redundant with some of the stuff we've already done.
Exactly. So we're gonna have to probably rely on you, the listeners, to help us figure out what songs to play when we get to those particular games, 11 and 14. We'll do I
guess we can poke them on Twitter, can't we?
Twitter, Discord, email, all great ways to contact us, and I will start putting together lists of the songs that you want to hear for those particular games, and we discuss their soundtracks. So think about that and listen for us when we announce when we're going to be taking in your thoughts on that, and we'll go from there. Should be a lot of fun.
I'm already looking forward to it.
Exactly. Anything else that you can think of, Seyrr, that you want to talk about?
I'm just kind of awash in Final Fantasy X memories. I mean, it's one of the themes that they've explored a couple times, just this idea of, like, confronting death, confronting, like, the sort of, given that it is inevitable, how do we go on living? It's an idea that they've explored a lot. This was one of their earlier touches on it, which they've done a bit more since then. It's not their first time. I think even Final Fantasy III was the first time they'd actually explore the topic of confronting one's own mortality. Actually, no, thing about they've done that a couple because 9 had it. Anyways, it's a. But given that this is also, of course, a big topic for people, it's something that I've always really appreciated, just how much they explore this, how much they get into some of the really deep thoughts about it. This was the game that my dad watched me play and got really, really interested in the series as a result, so much so that he demanded that I pick up Final Fantasy X too, because he wanted to know what happened to Yuna afterwards. So just a lot of that real depth of storytelling, a lot of that willingness to look at these really difficult questions and explore them in a nuanced way. It's a hallmark of the series that keeps me coming back. So 10, it holds a special place in my heart for that.
And it was the fact that this was the first game on the PlayStation 2 and how they were able to seamlessly integrate FMVs into gameplay and make it look like they belonged together, and
the water was just so gorgeous. Like, given the theming of the game, like, a lot of the focus on the water was there, and that was at least in part a chance for them to show off.
Yeah. Yes, Final Fantasy VII was the first game to really bring in the FMV, but it was so jarring, the transition between gameplay, full motion video. You had these beautiful sprites, or these beautiful rendered images of beautifully designed characters, wonderful backgrounds and scenes, and then you get triangles and big blocks.
I remember it was like Mediel collapsing into the live stream and like Cloud being wheeled out over. It's like, okay, it is very clear and slightly clunky what is going on here.
But 10 made the FMVs were just a little bit of a juiced up version of the gameplay, but the gameplay looked very close to what those already rendered videos were showing. So
the gap was so much smaller,
and I guess I remember exactly where I was when I started playing it, having to go back and forth between myself and a roommate who was also playing it on my PlayStation 2, so trying to get the game back from him. Oh, those are the days, but good times. But I guess that's going to do it for this episode, guys. If you liked what you heard, make sure to like, subscribe, or follow us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, or whatever your preferred podcatcher is. And if possible, leave us a rating or review. It helps other people find our show and lets us know how we're doing. If you really like the show, you can consider subscribing to us here at twitch.tv/PhoenixStarRadio, where you get access to a number of subscriber-only emotes and badges. And you can just join us every other Saturday night to be part of the shenanigans that we like to pull when we do the show live. Or if you want to support us out on Patreon, like our benevolent overlord Rory Fenrir, or our shadowy foreign investor Tibian Salts, you can go out to patreon.com/Phoenix Down Radio, where you get early access to the podcast and the video as well. So just one small way to thank you guys for your support in that way. All proceeds go towards growing the show, cover hosting costs, allow us to improve and upgrade our equipment, as well as do some fun things like contests and giveaways. But any kind of support, whether it's emails, tweets, likes, subs, follows, donations, whatever, it's all greatly appreciated because we just love interacting with you guys and the community. If you want to check out our backlog of episodes, you can go out to our website, phoenixstormradio.com. If you have questions, comments, suggestions, or just want to say hi, you can email us podcast@phoenixstormradio.com. Hit us up on Twitter with your spicy memes or suggestions for things that you may want to see or songs you want us to include in upcoming Final Fantasy 11 and 14 collaborations at PHXDN Radio out on Twitter. Or, like I said, join us live every other Saturday night here at twitch.tv/PhoenixDown Shout out, Seyrr?
I'll go ahead and give a shout out today to my mom, whose birthday was yesterday. Mother's Day is tomorrow, so very busy time of the year for her. For those listening, I want to remind you, of course, to call the mothers in your life, whether that be blood relations, folks who have had the motherly role. Let them know what they mean to you. Motherhood, family takes on all sorts of different roles and meanings in your life, so I'm not going to presume what that means for you, but this is a good time to just remember and appreciate them. Yeah. You can, of course, find me on Twitter at FF14Seyrr. That is FF65SEYRR. Single Y, double R. People mix that up from time to time. As well as on the Discord. Always happy to chat with folks. Love to hear what you have to say. The community that we have here is what really makes this worthwhile. So always happy to hear from you all.
Yep, we wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't for you guys.
Pretty much.
Well, we might be, but it just wouldn't be quite as fun or as spicy.
I would put even less effort into it.
Yeah, and he puts very little effort into it.
Next up, the lore of link shells, because I'm going to be phoning it in. Anyways.
That was pretty weak, by the way.
Thank you.
And I'm going to go ahead and shout out my mothers. Yes, I have two of them. I am adopted. So shout out to both my birth mother and my adoptive mother. Love you both. Thank you so much for putting up with me. I mean, what else can you say? Shout out to everybody listening to us live here at Twitch as well as out on the podcast. Like I said, you guys are the reason we're doing this. Shout out to my co-host Seyrr. You even though you don't seem to want to do much, I'm kidding. No, you're always.
There's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on, and it is what it is. So I'm not too concerned. But you do always bring your best when it comes to doing the podcast, and I appreciate that. So thank you. And if you want to follow me out on Twitter, I am at PHXDN_KLAUSS. I don't post much, but when I do, it's usually kind of shitty memes. Because that's what Twitter is. Well, I'm still, to be honest with you, with everything going on with Twitter right now, I'm kind of waiting to feel it out a little bit. We may end up having to figure out other ways to socialize with our listener base. So.
Yeah, stuff's kind of problematic right now.
Exactly. So we're going to we'll see what happens with that. But best way, always the Discord. So join us on our Discord channel, which is linked on our website, as well as I did send a link to it within the chat here as well for those of you listening live. So thank you very much. Anyway, for my co-host, Seyrr Timono, I am Klaus Nightbringer, and wishing everybody a wonderful evening. Thank you so much for joining us in this, and we'll catch you in the next one. Take care. What's going on here? It's not going. 2 seconds here. Why is this not working now? We'll fix this in the post, I'm sure, but I don't even know where to I'm so used to doing it with the buttons that I don't even know where the ending point is for it on. I'll have to. Okay, so for you guys, the video, you're not going to have the ending theme. Apologies for that, but I will get this onto the actual show. So until then, take care. And Phoenix on Radio is a production of PhoenixRadio.com and Illusion Productions. Final Fantasy 14 and yours are trademarks of Square Enix. In-game content of this is this copyright of Square Enix, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. Okay.
Something, your face.
All right, let's hit that and